Welcome to Cheat Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. She sat across from me in that cafe, smiling like we were old friends catching up, completely unaware that I had already dialed her parents, that her mother was about to cry, that her father was about to put his face in his hands, and that everything she'd spent months trying to reframe was about to be said out loud, in front of the people she could never lie to. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Marcus. I'm 31. And 3 years ago, I married the woman I was absolutely certain I was supposed to marry. Her name was Sarah, and when I say she was everything I looked for, I don't mean that in the vague, romantic way people say it when they're trying to explain love to someone who hasn't felt it yet. I mean it specifically, precisely, with the kind of clarity that only comes from watching someone long enough to know who they actually are, not just who they are on good days. She was level-headed, thoughtful, completely unbothered by material things. She communicated openly, the kind of woman who told you when something was wrong instead of letting it sit and rot between you. We dated for 3 years before we got married, and in all that time, I never saw a single red flag. Not one. In fact, about 2 years into our relationship, she cut off a close friend who had cheated on her boyfriend. Just like that. No drama. No long deliberation. That crossed a line for her, and she walked away from a years-long friendship without looking back. At the time, I thought that was the greenest flag I had ever seen. I thought it told me everything I needed to know about her character. I was wrong. Not about who she was then, but about how permanent character actually is when the right circumstances apply enough pressure. If I had to point to the moment things started shifting, it was the new job. She joined a new company about a year into our marriage, and the team she landed on was different from what she was used to. Younger, louder. A group of women who moved through life at a completely different speed than Sarah always had. Frequent nights out, constant invitations, the kind of social energy that treats every weekend like something to be maximized. Sarah didn't engage at first. She kept her professional and personal life cleanly separated, which I respected. But gradually, slowly, she started going along, just for team building, she said. She didn't want to seem like she was too good for the group. She didn't want to be singled out. The reasoning was sound. I didn't have a problem with it. But then the questions started. One night at dinner, she set down her fork, looked at me, and asked if I ever regretted settling down too quickly. I put my fork down and stared at her. It came from nowhere. I asked what she meant. She shrugged and said her coworkers were always doing new and exciting things, and it made her wonder if there was more out there that she hadn't experienced. I completely missed what she was actually saying. I thought she meant travel, experiences, new places, and new foods. I thought she was just overdue for a vacation, and the energy of her new workplace had stirred something restless in her. So I asked where she wanted to go. She lit up talking about Greece. I patted myself on the back for reading the room. I hadn't read the room at all. About a month later, we were on the couch watching TV when she turned to me and said she wanted to ask me something. I said go ahead. She asked if I'd ever heard of couples giving each other a pass. I knew exactly what it meant, but I couldn't process why she was asking, so I said I wasn't sure, hoping she was referring to something else entirely. She wasn't. She explained it calmly, reasonably, with the measured, deliberate tone of someone who had been rehearsing. According to her, some couples allowed each other to temporarily explore other connections so they wouldn't have to carry regret later. She framed it like a progressive relationship concept, like something emotionally intelligent adults discussed openly instead of pretending didn't exist. I sat there and said nothing, just waited. She danced around it for a while longer, said it might be healthy to talk about these things, said she'd rather have an honest conversation than end up doing something dishonest later because she felt trapped. And then she said it straight. There was a guy at work. I didn't need her to tell me the name. I already knew. His name was Michael. The co-worker she'd mentioned more times than I could count, always in a professional context. Always about how competent he was, how he never made extra work for anyone, how he was the most reliable person in the office. I had never read too much into it. In that moment, sitting on our couch, in our home, surrounded by the life we had built together, I understood what I had been missing. She wasn't just impressed by his work ethic. I asked her if she was serious. She looked at me like I was the one being unreasonable. I asked, plainly, directly, if she was genuinely trying to get me to give her permission to sleep with another man. I told her she could dress it up however she wanted. She could call it a pass, an open relationship, a mature modern framework. It was cheating with extra steps. And the way she'd framed it, suggesting she couldn't promise faithfulness if she didn't get what she wanted, that wasn't honesty. That was a threat. To my surprise, she didn't deny it. She said she was just being transparent about feelings she was developing. She said if she didn't have a safe outlet, she couldn't guarantee complete faithfulness in the future. Let me say that again clearly. My wife, the woman who had ended a friendship over someone else's infidelity, was sitting in our living room, telling me that if I didn't give her permission to pursue another man, she might pursue him anyway. She said it calmly. That was the part that was getting to me. The complete, unruffled composure of someone who had decided they were right and was now just waiting for you to catch up. I told her we weren't done, and I needed a moment to cool off. She looked at me and said, "Yeah, we can talk about this when you're ready to be an adult." That was it. I asked her if she honestly believed she was the mature one in this conversation. I told her that what she was doing, threatening me with infidelity to get my blessing, was not how marriage worked, not in any framework, modern or otherwise. She kept insisting I wasn't seeing it clearly. And in that moment, I saw it perfectly. I told her she was free to sleep with Michael. Her face practically lit up. I let her have exactly 1 second of that, and then I told her she was also free to leave the house and move in with him. Because I was done, the light went out of her face like a switch had been flipped. She stared at me and said we were just talking, that I was taking it too far, that she hadn't actually done anything. I told her she had done something. She had told me, clearly, directly, with a named individual, that she wanted to pursue another man, and that my feelings about it were secondary to her getting what she wanted. That wasn't a hypothetical. That was a declaration. The rest of that night was loud and long, and I won't walk through all of it. What I will say is this. The calm, superior tone she'd maintained through the entire conversation disappeared quickly once she realized I wasn't going to be reasoned back into compliance. She called me insecure, needy, immature for not engaging with her framework. I locked myself in the bedroom. She yelled outside the door for a while. Then she left. Then she came back softer, asking to talk it through. I didn't say a word. That became the arrangement. I slept in the bedroom. She slept in the guest room. She kept trying to open conversations. I kept ending them before they started. I was already thinking about lawyers. I spoke to a divorce attorney the day after I posted about it online. The responses were nearly unanimous. My marriage was effectively over the moment she named a specific person she wanted to pursue. That wasn't a hypothetical. That wasn't an abstract conversation about relationship philosophy. That was a woman telling her husband she had already emotionally invested in someone else and wanted the freedom to act on it while keeping everything at home intact. She wanted to test drive another man and keep me as the warranty. My attorney gave me clear direction, minimal interaction, no confrontations, document everything. Sarah tried every angle she had, gaslighting, blame shifting, provoking me into arguments she could reframe as evidence that I was the unstable one. Every time she started, I hit record on my phone and walked to the bedroom. I was not going to let her control the narrative. The process was painful in the way that dismantling something you genuinely loved is always painful. Not because of who she had become, but because of who she had been. The future we talked about. The house. The kids we'd named and conversations we'd had like they were already real. Losing that version of the future hurt in a way that had nothing to do with her anymore. But I pushed through. I moved out. I got my own place. And I gave myself space to breathe for the first time in months. The divorce was finalized cleanly. No alimony. We hadn't been married long, and she earned well. My attorney was thorough, and the judge agreed. We split everything fairly, and it was done. But Sarah wouldn't let it be done. Even after the paperwork was signed, she kept reaching out, kept trying to get me to acknowledge that I had overreacted, that I had broken up a marriage over a conversation, that if I had just been willing to engage like an adult, her words, always her words, we could have worked through it. I think she needed me to say she hadn't done anything wrong, that the marriage failing was a mutual misunderstanding rather than a direct consequence of her choices. She needed absolution, and she decided I was the one who had to give it to her. I agreed to one last meeting, not to give her what she needed, for something else entirely. We met at a cafe about 10 minutes from where we used to live. She was already there when I arrived. She waved me over with a warm smile, genuinely warm, almost like old times. And we sat down, and she started talking about how sad she was that things had gone the way they did, about how she believed we could have worked through it, about how the situation had been blown out of proportion by my reaction. I let her talk. All of it. I sat there and nodded and let her make her full case. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly. I told her I wanted to bring a few other people into the conversation. She looked confused. Asked who. I picked up my phone and started a video call. Her parents' faces filled the screen before she could finish asking what I was doing. I had told them to expect the call. They had been waiting. Sarah has been wanting to discuss why our marriage ended, I said, turning the phone toward her. I thought you should hear it directly. Her face went white. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. But her parents were already on the line, her father leaning forward, her mother still and watchful, and I turned the phone back to myself and told them everything. Calmly, completely. The pass she'd asked for. Michael, the way she'd framed faithfulness as conditional on getting what she wanted. The months of her insisting that I was the immature one for refusing to accept it. Every detail. In order. Without embellishment. Her father was silent through all of it. Her mother's expression shifted slowly, painfully, from confusion to something much harder to look at. When I finished, her father had his face in his hands. Her mother asked Sarah if it was true. Sarah stammered. Said it wasn't as simple as that. Said something about honesty, about hypotheticals, about modern relationships. Her father looked up and cut her off. Asked flatly if she had asked her husband for permission to sleep with another man. Sarah said nothing. Her mother said, quietly, not in anger, but in something much more devastating than anger, that she thought she had raised her better than that. Her father stood up and walked away from the camera without another word. Her mother ended the call. The cafe was very quiet. Sarah sat across from me, not the composed, certain woman who had explained open relationship philosophy on our couch, just a woman staring at the table, the color gone from her face, suddenly aware that other people around them had heard every word of that call. She looked at me and said I didn't need to do that. I told her I had just told the truth. She'd spent months insisting it wasn't a big deal, so it shouldn't matter if her parents knew exactly what had happened. She sat there for a while, without speaking. Then she looked around the cafe. slowly, the way you do when you're suddenly aware of being watched, gathered herself, stood up, and said she needed to call her parents. She walked out. I sat there and finished my coffee. Unlike her, I didn't have anything to be ashamed of. Her parents called me the next day. Her father apologized, kept saying she should have known better, that he didn't raise her to behave that way. I told him it wasn't his fault, that she had surrounded herself with the wrong influences and let bad advice override her own judgment. He couldn't argue with that. I never heard from Sarah again after the calf, whether she finally accepted that it was over, or whether she was simply afraid of what I might do next if she pushed. Either outcome worked for me. People ask me sometimes if I wish I'd handled it differently. I think about it honestly when they do. Here's what I know. I didn't end my marriage because of a hypothetical. I ended it because my wife sat me down and told me, with a specific name attached, that she had already emotionally checked out and wanted the freedom to act on it, while keeping our home, our plans, our future, and our shared bank account exactly where they were. She wanted the excitement of something new and the security of everything she already had. She wanted to keep the main save file while running a side quest. I removed myself from the menu. Completely. Without anger, without negotiation, without the prolonged back and forth of a man trying to win back a woman who had already decided she wanted someone else. Some people said I was too harsh. That, the calf moment, the parents on video call, was too far. I disagree. She spent months insisting that what she had done was reasonable, mature, and honest. She framed my response as the problem. She called me immature to my face, to her friends, to anyone who would listen, and she kept doing it all the way through the divorce and beyond. I simply told the truth, in front of the people she had never been able to perform for, and the truth, without any addition, without any embellishment, was enough. Her father walked away from the camera. Her mother said she thought she'd raised her better. I didn't need to say another word. I'm rebuilding now. Slowly and deliberately, the way you rebuild anything that had to be taken down to the foundation. Work, gym, friends, the quiet, unglamorous, completely mine rhythm of a life that belongs to no one else. Do I wish things had gone differently? In another version of the story, if she had come to me and said something was wrong, that something felt off, that she needed us to pay more attention to each other, I would have fought for us. I would have tried. I would have done everything in my power to fix whatever needed fixing. But that's not the story she wrote. She wrote a story about a woman who wanted everything and saw no reason she shouldn't have it, who confused honesty with entitlement, who called boundaries immaturity because boundaries were inconvenient for what she wanted. I just read between the lines. And I did the hard part for her. Thank you for watching.